Aloha! Welcome to 3 Levels of Enlightenment. This is program number 1.2, the 2012 reversal of the direction of rotation of the planet Earth. This is the second program in a series sponsored by the United Galactic Federation of Planets, or UGFP, as you can see in front of me. My name is Merlin, and I'll be your tour guide. We're coming to you from the Gilbert Ray Campground in Tucson Mountain County Park here in Tucson, Arizona. Standing behind me is my good friend Roy, and on my left is his partner Dale. Roy and Dale are giant saguaro cactuses, magnificent creations of nature that are found here in this part of the world. We're joined by other fascinating plants like prickly pear cactus, barrel cactus, jumping choyas, palo verdes, mesquite, and many other beautiful creations of nature. We also have coyotes, mountain lions, lynx, bobcats, deer, rabbits, snakes, quail, roadrunners, doves, pigeons, hummingbirds, and lots of other wildlife throughout the park. You may actually hear some of those birds singing today, this morning. Both this park and the Saguaro National Park next door are great places to visit, as well as Old Tucson Movie Studios just across the road and the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum just down the road. Over the past 12 years, my wife Moana and I have been given information concerning our world and future events. We always share this information with everyone we know, but when the event occurs, they always forget and say, "Why didn't you tell us?" By producing these videos, we can now say, we did tell you. We intend to produce about 6 programs. Hopefully, all of these programs will be available on the internet and on cable TV. The information in this particular program, the 2012 reversal of the direction of rotation of the planet Earth, has grave implications. But this information is not meant to scare you or frighten you. It's merely meant to inform you. There's a reason for all the unexplained events that are happening in our world today, from the predictions about 2012 to the oxygen readings in Los Angeles and San Francisco of 12% and in Tokyo of 7% when it should be 21%, to earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, hurricanes, megastorms, winter tornadoes, and thunder snow, to disappearing honeybees, mass extinctions, birds falling from the sky, fish kills, and marine animal beachings, to the answer if oil is fossil or abiotic, to women getting pregnant after radical hysterectomies, to near-death experiences, UFOs, aliens, and ghosts, to the 2008 stock market crash, the 2009 stock market rebound, the 2010 market flash crash, and all of the bankruptcies and job losses, to the Oklahoma City Federal Building bombing, all of the events in 9/11, and the Iraq and Afghan wars, to the reason that Saddam could not have had nuclear weapons and why the terrorists can never nuke the United States, to the presidential elections of 2000 and 2004, and the reason why George W. Bush had to be president of the United States. All of these events can be explained, and you have a right to know. I'd now like to explain why these programs are entitled The 3 Levels of Enlightenment. Our sponsors are sensitive to the feelings and beliefs of all of you. Our sponsors do not want to offend anyone, so as a precaution, the programs have been sorted out into 3 categories, levels 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is for all audiences and is rated PG-13. No one should be offended by the information offered at this level, but parents are cautioned that this level may not be appropriate for young children. Level 2 is only for people who believe in angels and is rated R. It is not for children, and adults who don't believe in angels may also be offended and are cautioned not to watch. Level 3 will definitely offend certain groups and is rated XXX. It is absolutely not for children, and it is likely not for some adults. The groups that will be offended include 1. People with a strong belief in religion. 2. people with a strong belief in science. And 3, people with a strong belief in our government's official explanations for events. Anyone in these groups should not watch level 3. If you tune in after the program has started, when the level was first announced, you'll still be able to identify the level being discussed in several ways. On the board behind me are the words level and number, corresponding to today's program. This is level 1, program 2. The tray in front of me has a placard with the letters PG-13. This is a level 1 program, and it's rated PG-13. During the programs that are levels 2 and levels 3, the tray will hold placards indicating R or XXX respectively. In addition, you will be able to determine the level of the program by the shirt that I'm wearing. Level 1 will have a Hawaiian shirt, as is this Hawaiian shirt. Level 2 will have a plaid shirt, and level 3 will have a white shirt. So to give you an idea, these are Hawaiian shirts, different colors. If you see me wearing any one of these Hawaiian shirts, you'll know that we're talking about level 1. During close-ups, the shirts will be the only way that you can tell what the program is. Here are the plaid shirts. They come in many different colors. So if you see me wearing a plaid shirt, or any of my guest speakers wearing a plaid shirt, you'll know we're at level 2. If you don't believe in angels, do not watch that program. And then lastly, level 3, the white shirt. That will offend many of you, I'm afraid. So please evaluate which levels might cause you to be offended, then watch accordingly. My wife and I have homes on the Big Island of Hawaii, in Northern California, and here in Tucson, Arizona. It turns out there's an important connection between all of these locations. My wife is pure Hawaiian. She's a 6th great-granddaughter of the first king of Hawaii, Kamehameha the Great, and she's a great-grandniece of the last king and the last queen. We have a bird joining us. King Kalakaua and Queen Liliuokalani. Her genealogy turns out to be another very important part of our operations. My wife served in the Army in the 1960s and is a Vietnam-era veteran. She's a graduate of the University of Hawaii and operates her own business in Hilo, Hawaii. I was born and raised in Michigan, in the palm of the hand, as we say. My family moved to Southern California in 1964 and then moved to Northern California in 1966, where I finished high school and then went to college. I served in the Navy in the 1960s and am also a Vietnam-era veteran. I then served 23 years in the Air Force Reserve from the 1980s until the mid-2000s. I'm retired from an airline for over 8 years. Over 35 years, I've been a pilot, a flight instructor, and an aircraft mechanic. I've logged more than 30,000 hours of flight time in everything from small Cessnas, Pipers, Beech, and other small aircraft, all the way up to the big jets. I have a story I'd like to tell you, in fact, about the DC-10. Our company used to have 2 DC-10 30s. We flew DC-10-10s in regular service, but we got a contract with a company called Renaissance Cruises to fly their passengers from Los Angeles down to Tahiti. And in the process, they bought us 2 DC-10-30s. So the DC-10-30s had just been delivered to the company, and I was on a flight from Honolulu to Los Angeles one night. It was a red eye that left Honolulu at midnight, got into LA about 5:30 in the morning, and we made the first leg of the flight in a DC-10-10, our standard 10s, and then when we got to LA, we switched planes, did a quick turnaround, and then continued on to Las Vegas. And the Las Vegas leg was a fairly short leg, it's about a half an hour flight, and we would have a few passengers in the plane, but barely any luggage. These guys were gamblers, obviously, going to Las Vegas, and the plane would not have very much fuel because you don't need much gas to go from LA to Las Vegas. And then we had this new plane to our fleet that had the big engines. And our captain decided he wanted to find out what kind of performance those big engines provided. And when we go to take off, we can either make a rolling takeoff, where you just get out on the runway and start bringing up the engines, bringing up the power and let the airplane roll, or you can sit at the end of the runway and hold the brakes, bring up the engines, and then take off. In bad weather conditions or on a short runway, we would always do that. But Captain Mike decided he wanted to see what these big engines could do. On that flight, I was the engineer. I sat behind the two pilots, and I sat in a chair that was sideways to them. I had a desk in front of me that had my materials on it, my timer and calculator and pens and so forth. And when that plane took off, the acceleration was so great that everything on my desk ended up on the floor, and I had to hold on to my chair for dear life because of the incredible acceleration. And it seemed like we virtually jumped into the air. The plane was so light, those engines were so powerful that we just took off like a cannonball. Well, when we got to Las Vegas, we were in the crew van on the way to the hotel, and the flight attendants were giggling about something. So we had to find out what they were talking about. Turns out there was a lady in first class who was being somewhat obnoxious. When people first board the airplane, the flight attendants will serve them coffee and so forth. And this particular lady did not want to give up her coffee. And the problem was, when we pushed back from Terminal 2 in Los Angeles and taxi out to the runway to 24 left, it's a very short taxi. And if there's nobody in front of us and everything's ready, we can push and go and be airborne in like 3 minutes. Well, the flight attendants have to take their seats before we take off. And if they're not able to collect all the beverages, that person ends up holding that beverage as we take off. Well, you can see where this is going. And if you've had the opportunity to see the movie Top Gun, you might remember the scenes where Tom Cruise was flying his F-14 Tomcat, and he used to love to buzz the tower to irritate the tower supervisor. And every time he buzzed the tower, the supervisor would end up pouring his coffee all over himself. Well, the same thing happened to this lady. As we did this rocket takeoff, she ended up wearing that coffee. And the flight attendants were beside themselves. They had to hide their faces because they were laughing so hard. I guess they kind of felt she deserved what she got. And the moral of the story is, if the flight attendants tell you it's time to turn in your beverages, do like they tell you. That's the best bet. Our first program in this series was entitled The Imminent Reversal of the Direction of Rotation of the Planet Mars. Today's program is almost the same, except we're going to change two words. We're taking out imminent, and we're taking out Mars. And in their place, we're putting the words 2012 and Earth. In the previous program, we talked about a coming event, the reversal of Mars. By the time you see this program, Mars may have already reversed its direction. We don't know when that's going to happen, but we know it's going to happen soon. In the case of Earth, we know the exact date of its reversal. It will be on December 21st, 2012. In the last program, we talked about Bode's law and how it explained what happened to a planet that used to be between Mars and Jupiter. Under Bode's law, we use the numbers 3 and 4 to come up with a table. You start with 0, to that you add 3, then you double. 3 doubles to 6, 6 doubles to 12, 12 doubles to 24, 24 doubles to 48, 48 doubles to 96, and 96 doubles to 192. And then to that we add 4, and we get 4, 7, 10, 16, 28, 52, 100, and 196. And then we take these numbers and we divide through by 10. So that means we move the decimal place 1 to the left. So 4 becomes 0.4, 7 is 0.7, 1.0, 1.6, 2.8, 5.2, 10, and 19.6. The Encyclopedia of Astronomy and Astrophysics shows how Bode's law's distances are almost identical to the actual distances in astronomical units. As we look at Mercury, Venus, and Earth, we see that Bode's law is identical to the actual. Mars is 1/10 of an astronomical unit further out, according to Bode. Ceres and Jupiter are exact, and then Saturn and Uranus are a little further out based on Bode. But otherwise, his chart is remarkably accurate for something more than 250 years ago. And then as you look at the entire article, you can read more about the history of Bode's law. In the last program, I went on to explain the rotation of all these planets in our solar system. Mercury rotates counterclockwise. Venus, we're going to skip for now. Earth rotates counterclockwise. Mars, we're also going to skip. The asteroids don't rotate. Jupiter rotates counterclockwise. Saturn rotates counterclockwise. And Uranus also rotates counterclockwise. The name of our last program was the imminent reversal of the direction of rotation of Mars. Mars right now is going counterclockwise, but very soon, or maybe already, it has gone and reversed itself and gone clockwise. And in the case of Venus, she's also going clockwise. Well, if our two sister planets, Venus and Mars, are both going clockwise, then it stands to reason we're next. My sources to prove the reversal for the planet Earth include Stephen Hawking's book, The Grand Design, which just came out recently, the book of Joshua from the Bible, George Braden's book, Fractal Time, which also just came out recently, the continual reporting of the Earth wobbling from all these major earthquakes we've seen just in the last few months. The Ring of Fire is all the area around the Pacific Basin. We've had an earthquake now in South America, one over here by Australia, one up by Asia. The three corners of the square, you might say, which means North America is more than likely next. I'd like to provide a little demonstration to explain magnetism. I'm going to use my Toyota Tacoma pickup, and I'm going to use the engine compartment specifically to do this. Many, many years ago, back in the 1950s, my grandfather taught me a way to magnetize screwdrivers. Now here's a rather good sized screwdriver, and as you can tell, it's not magnetized. Here's a bowl full of screws and it has no effect on them. But what would be really nice is if I could pick up things with this screwdriver, if I could magnetize it. Well, there's a way. What you do is you take a piece of Romex wire. This happens to be 12 gauge wire. It's used in our houses and it's used primarily in kitchens. It's a heavier gauge wire than what they use in bedrooms and living rooms. And it just happens to be the one that I have available today. But you take off a chunk of it and then you want to pull out one of the insulated copper wires that's on the inside. Now, if you guys try this, don't hurt yourselves. A pair of scissors, sharp. Don't cut yourselves. But it is a great way to magnetize screwdrivers. I'm just going to grab the copper wire, the white wire, and pull it out. have a truck coming by us in a second here. We are in a campground and we have others besides ourselves. Morning. Wyoming. So then you take your handy dandy wire stripper and you locate 12 gauge and you put that on there and you go pull. You put it on 14 gauge and you go I'm cheating. You go pull, and now I have a piece of insulated wire that has one end stripped, and then go down here to the other end and I pull it off, and now I have two ends of this copper insulated wire, two ends that are open. And what I do next is I take these guys and I wrap them around this screwdriver. So here we go. So now I've got an insulated copper wire wrapped around a metal screwdriver. I've made this coil all the way around it. And I'm going to touch the ends of these wires, these two ends, to this car battery. Now you're going to see a spark, and you got to be careful when you do this that you don't hurt yourself. Don't get yourself between the wire and the battery, because then the spark goes through you. And I can guarantee you that 12 volts can still hurt. And I've also got a simple Boy Scout compass. Compasses have a needle, and the needle points to north. And at this point, you can tell that the needle is being unaffected by the screwdriver. It doesn't notice the screwdriver in any way. So here we go. We're going to zap this screwdriver. It's also a good idea not to be touching the car as you do this. Now you're going to see a blue spark right now. Hey. And guess what? The screwdriver is now a magnet. Remember how it didn't pick up the screws a second ago, and now it picks them up. And if I take this handy dandy Boy Scout compass and lay it over the screwdriver, it's pointing towards magnetic north on the compass. The green arrow is north, and it's telling us that the handle of this screwdriver is north, and the other end is south. Well, guess what? If I take this same screwdriver, now remember I said this end is north and this end is south, and we originally zapped it like that. What if I turn it around? Now I'm going to point the handle towards you and the tip's pointed towards me, and we're going to do this all over again. I'm going to remagnetize the screwdriver. And remember, don't touch the terminals yourself, because you can get zapped, and you're going to see a blue flame again. See that? Once again, our screwdriver is magnetized. It'll pick up lots of screws. But now, when we place the compass over it, now north is towards the tip as opposed to the handle. If you remember a second ago, north was the handle and south was the tip. Now north is the tip and south is the handle. So what's happened is the poles on this screwdriver have reversed. At one time, this was north. Now, this is north. Well, how did that happen? This wire is conducting electrons in a circular fashion in a coil around this screwdriver. And what it does is it generates a field of energy around this screwdriver. And in the process, it magnetizes it. And one end will be north and one end will be south. And depending upon the direction that those electrons are moving through that field, one side will be north, one side will be south. Well, we started out with a handle here, and that guy became north. Now, if you can think of this, those electrons are going from the positive terminal in the battery to the negative terminal. And as they went through this field, they were going that way and came out there, North Pole. Then we flipped it upside down, did the same thing all over again, except now it's actually going the opposite direction. The coil got turned around as well as a screwdriver. And the electrons still went from here to here, but the north pole is now the tip. So the concept of north and south poles when it comes to electrons revolving in a field is that as the electrons flow through that circular field, one end of the field becomes north and the other end becomes south. Now the same thing happens with electric drills. Here's a battery-powered drill. When I put this little lever in one position, the drill screws things clockwise. In other words, I can drill these screws in with this drill when the button is in that one position. And from my point of view, that thing's spinning like a clock, clockwise. Now if I push the button the other way, now I can screw these screws back out. Well, guess what happened when I pushed that button? This thing controls the direction of the electrons flowing through the field in the armature of the motor. And when it's in one position, the electrons flow one way and the drill screws clockwise, and you push the lever the other way and it screws out the other way. And at the same time, you're actually changing the poles of this motor. One side will be north, one side will be south, and then when I switch the lever, then the other side becomes north, the other side becomes south. So once again, we have electrons flowing in a circular fashion and creating a north and a south pole. And in this case, the armature of the motor is turning. This is just a standard variable speed reversible drill. It's just like the battery powered drill. It's got the little lever down here, and if I had power, I could show you how it will screw things clockwise in one position and counterclockwise in another. But once again, you're changing those electrons as they move through that field, and at the same time you're changing the north and south poles. Well, what does that have to do with us? Here's your big question. Our Earth is like a great big motor. It's spinning, and there are electrons coming into this moving field. We're spinning counterclockwise, and as those electrons come into our field, they generate a north and south pole. If those poles are going to reverse, then the direction of rotation of this field, of this big motor we call the Earth, has to change. Right now we're going counterclockwise. If the North Pole is going to trade places with the South Pole, then our motor has to go the other way. And that's what we're talking about. We have a reversal of the Earth, of the rotation of the Earth, coming up in about 18 months on winter solstice 2012. Our sister planet Mars is either about to reverse her rotation, or she already has by the time you see this video. And if our two sister planets are both going the opposite directions, Venus is already going clockwise and Mars will be going clockwise, then it just stands to reason we're next. Hope you enjoyed that. So if you try this at home, be careful. Don't get burned. I will not be responsible for anybody getting hurt. Just be smart.